ክፍያስ ፍቅር ነው ልብን የሚያሳርፍ ትዝታን ከያዘ ይጓዛል እስከ ልብ ያትነስብኝ ክበድ በትዝታ ያለፈን ንገረኝ መኖር ሳትገኝ ሰው ባለፈው ናፍቆት ለካንስ ያለቅሳል አይደለም በሞሸር ሞት እንኳን ያስቀናል አይደለም ያንድ ቀን ያመታት ቀጠሮ ልብ ላይ ይጻፋል አይረሳም ኑሮ ሰው ባለፈው ናፍቆት ለካንስ ያለቅሳል አይደለም በሞሸር ሞት እንኳን ያስቀናል አይደለም ያንድ ቀን
Greeting to you all. My name is Mahdi Omar. This is the African Television Network of New England. Immigration is part of the DNA of the United States. Whether motivated by the search for economic opportunity or by religious and political freedom, immigrants have been flocking to U.S. shore for over 200 years. Yet debates about who belongs and who should be allowed in are as old as the nation itself. Sometimes the debate focuses on economic issues such as the supposed threat that new immigrants pose to local jobs, but just as often the debate is about culture. Each new wave of immigration provokes anxieties about whether newcomers can assimilate into American life or whether they represent a threat to American value and cohesiveness. After a campaign in which immigration played an unexpectedly important role, President Trump, in his first year in office, made good on many of his campaign promises to clamp down on U.S. immigration and refugee policies. The rollback of Obama-era expansion in health insurance, potential imposition of new penalties for immigrant who uses social service, impact of cuts to local refugee resettlement programs, and others debate around key integration support are unfolding. As an African immigrant and refugee living in America, should we be concerned and alarmed by this phenomenon, or is it just a passing political gimmick? To talk about these topics and related issues, I invited two guests to our studio, Shiro Ninja and Rahman Oladipolo. Shiro Ninja's career has taken many years of study and research. He holds 3 different degrees in economics, accounting from University of South Africa and Salem State University, and MBA from McLean Graduate School of Bentley. Currently works at the Department of Revenue. He is also the founder of African Center for Fraud Prevention. Rahman Oladipolo is Harvard-educated, a Nigerian-born author and award-winning filmmaker based in Boston. Welcome to our studio, my good friends.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here. Before we start our conversation, I think congratulations is in order, Chiro, on your well-deserved success. You are now working for the Department of Revenue. How fitting is that? You are the founder of African Center for Fraud Prevention, and congratulations.
Thank you for the great wishes, and thank you, African Center for Fraud, African Television Network viewers, for granting me this opportunity to address you today. I thank God for giving me this opportunity to use the knowledge that this great land, the United States, has given me in order to give back to the citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Being a certified fraud examiner, being an accountant, being the founder of the African Center for Fraud Prevention, and working at the Department of Revenue as a tax examiner, a tax accountant, it's a great thing because I am able to give back to the community. I'm able to be part of that team that drive a great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that is where everyone in this beautiful state would love to be. So I'm honored, I feel delighted, and I feel humble at the same time. Thank you.
Yeah, how difficult was it to join the institution? Is it?
Well, you know, working for the Commonwealth, like working for any government, is a process. It takes time. Not because of anything, but just because the government wants the best. And the government wants people who will be able to give back to the society and make the community a better place. That's the goal. And to be honest with you, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts fits that so well. It's a united nation by its own. It's very diverse.
Yeah.
It brings in a lot of people from all over the world. And that is what makes Massachusetts great.
Yeah.
That's what makes America great. And that is why, as Americans, we have to stick up to this.
Yeah.
We have to take into consideration this diversity. We need to address all these topics that we have today, the census, the elections, because together we make this nation great. And that is why this nation is what it is.
Beautiful.
So it's a great honor to be part of this prestigious panel that would address core issues that affect this society, because our goal is not only to make this nation great, but make this nation number one and always remain number one worldwide.
Beautiful. Rahman, you made a good point, right?
Yeah. It's a very good point, you know, something that you can't emphasize enough, you know, especially in these current times. And something that sticks with me. In your introduction, you said immigration is part of the DNA of the United States of America, and you know, that can be can be more true.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you know, it affects almost everything that we are going through right now, from the census issue that's coming up, the election, 2020 election, what have you, the problems, the ills of the society, the like the disasters that we had last weekend, you know, everything.
I have that question.
The immigration issue is kind of like wrapped around the whole thing, and you wonder, you know, how do we move past this? And of course, it's in a way you can say it's a question that it's not like you're going to solve it conclusively at any given time, but you'll expect that at this time, early in this 21st excuse me, century, that we ought to have understood the old concept of immigration, how it's integrated in the DNA, as you said, that we wouldn't be having this kind of problems that we are having, and it's very sad to see us, you know, ramming into that wall again and again, and you know.
Well, by the way, before we actually start a serious question, you were an event showing your film Soul Sisters last night.
Yes.
How did it go?
It went very well.
Briefly.
Yeah, it went very well. You know, it's my first film, my first feature film, Soul Sisters, which also deals with the issue of immigration. It's about an African immigrant here in Boston, trying to settle in the United States and pursue her career, and she runs into things that outside the United States you don't see when you're coming in, and also how perspectives change, you know, as someone in wherever you are in the world, that your problem has been recognized within the American Constitution, which is what makes this country really great. your problems being acknowledged, in the sense that you're having religious persecution, political persecutions, all sorts of and you're looking at, you want to get out of the confines of the problem that you're going through that's crushing you, and you're looking around the world. Where do you see a beacon of light somewhere where you can be welcome, where you can go to? That's how you're looking at immigration at the time. And it's however you can get out of the country to get to where you see an opportunity, where you see relief. That's how you see immigration at the time. But then you get to America and you're hearing people talking about the way you enter, talking about your immigration as a criminal venture. That you've broken a law somewhere, you're supposed to first be treated as a criminal and all that, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
So that kind of confusion and all of that, that's what we have in how we try to look at the situation in the film Soul Sisters. And people enjoyed it, people learned from it, and it was a wonderful experience last night, being among the people and being, yes.
Thank you. Well, congratulations again. I'm proud of you both, really. Gun violence. El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, are really reeling from this horrendous mass shooting. What is even scarier is that the suspect said he was deliberately targeting Mexicans. Killed 22, injured 11. In Dayton, 10 were killed and 27 injured. As an African immigrants, should we be alarmed, concerned, maybe even a little bit frightened? Rahman.
As African immigrants, yes, we should be concerned, but I actually try to look at things from a human perspective.
Sure.
That's how I measure my identity and people's identity, everyone in the first place. And when we look at it, that happening to people there, it is very sad. And what it speaks to is the lack of education that we have in our society. And people think education is not just you going to college and getting whatever degree so you can get a job, this kind of job. No, the real education is the education that makes you human, that makes you understand yourself, your position as a human being, and your responsibility to the human community. All of these things are lacking in the society today. Because when you look at so many things that surround this issue, it's difficult to comprehend unless you just look at it and see that this person lacks knowledge of whatever. Because you look at that area that you're talking about, before this kid was born,
You mean the El Paso killer?
the transaction between the Walmarts, people have been moving in and out in that area. Because the way they live, it's difficult for you to define the border there. And where do you say the people who live where you call outside the border of the United States? Take out all the legal definition or something. People have been living in this area and they've been moving in and out like that for a very long time before this kid was born. And you wake up one day and you think, okay, this is ours and that's yours. You shouldn't be coming here. Where is ours? Where is it? The tradition that's been going on there for decades, for so long, he didn't understand all of that and woke up one morning, carried a gun, and you went to a community and disrupt the community, trying to make them feel less safe to be able to conduct their lives as they've been doing for so long. So I think we need to really work harder on education, because the American system, as we see as immigrants here, we are able to see when we look at America on the books, if I could put it like that, we see something beautiful. That, you know, you look at the constitutions, you look at the promises, the hard work, how things have got to this stage. We look at that, and we see America as a beautiful project that's been going on for all this year. But yes, in reality, then when we see all the problems within it, you understand, the racism, the homophobia, even the primary, what we call the original sin of America, going from slavery, the treatment of black people all along. When we see all of that, yeah, it horrifies you, and then that's when the reality hits you. It shocks you that, you know, what you've been seeing on the books is quite different from what's on the ground. But then you look at it, okay, we are here, all of us, we are here. How do we make things better? How do we move forward? And what you see is actually the problem is the lack of education. You can't have an idea like this, what we call America. We like the idea of America being so great in the world and all of that, but the fundamental thing that we first need to do to educate the people so that everyone really understand what that America represents, how we all, you know, the integration of the immigration within it, the diversity and all of that. We need to really educate ourselves better so that we are, you know, all this problem. Then I think it's after that, I think we can now go into the specific issues of gun problem, mental health issue, terrorism and all of that. First, we need to educate ourselves much better. We are lacking.
Jetta.
Well, I think my brother said it all. He said, Raham made a great point. I think this is a very sad day for this country, for our nation, and for the land. For the people in particular of Texas and those of Ohio. The people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts stand with them in this sad period of their lives. We are mourning with them. It's a sad day for this country because these people killed the humans. That is not what America stands for. And as Americans, we believe in the lives of every human being, irrespective of their race, creed, gender, or religion. And we stand with them in this brave period, and we mourn with them, because once anything that happens to a state happens to us all as a nation. And in this sad, and that is what makes us great, because when we grieve together, and when we celebrate together. The people of Commonwealth and Africans, we believe that, we hope that this is not just going to be a mere statistics like others have been, but we hope that this would be the time when we all would stand up and say enough is enough, and we would take actions that would create the change that we need as a nation, because it's a very sad moment. We don't expect people to live in fear. Our nation is not built on fear, and we cannot be subject to fear because of behavior of one or two. We are above that, and we would rise above this. And we are going to take the stand to look at the culture. Raham just portrayed a very nice movie of an African, and I urge everyone to go and watch that movie because it's a great movie. It shows what we go through as Africans when we get into this brilliant, beautiful society. And I think that is the first step, because people need to understand all this to get to know us better and know others better. And when we do that, then we can also understand the culture. America is great. It's the strongest nation on the planet Earth, not because Americans are too smart, but because of the diversity that entails, the cultural spirit that goes with that diversity.
Mm-hmm. Great.
We are succeeding because we are diverse, and we need to understand that greatness comes with diversity, and not just diversity in race, but diversity in culture, creed, and every other aspect that goes with this. Yeah. So we need to stop playing blame games, and also the leadership of this country at this point in time need to take that bold step to change the culture, so that we can go in the right direction. Because enough is enough. No one should live in this brave land struggling or wondering what the next thing would be. What I ask myself, and we are just very fortunate that in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts we've not been embraced with such, and I keep my fingers crossed that we should never get involved in such. But what I ask myself is, when I look at people going out there to buy AK-47s, high-powered rifles, when our police officers just carry a shorthand gun, I question what the motive, I question where we are heading towards a nation. And these are conversations that we need to start having. Because we need to address these conversations properly so that we can move this society forward. And I'm happy that in the Commonwealth, the governor has been doing a great job. His communities have been doing a great job in embracing African Americans in decision making, bringing African Americans on the table, Africans as well on the table, so as to deliberate, and Hispanics and the like, so we can deliberate on the way forward for a better society. And I hope other states would emulate what Massachusetts is doing. We're not there yet, we're not the best, but I still believe we are really doing great things. But then we need to come on the dialogue table and look at ways to put a stop to this. Because what happens to these people that have lost great ones? The futures of young kids, young adults, people who are just starting that has been cut short as a result of negligence or someone's deliberate action. We cannot keep going on like this as a nation, as a society, and it's time we have that honest conversation and look for amicable solutions that would address this and put it to an end.
Thank you. Thank you. You mentioned the Commonwealth. Actually, we are very, very blessed to live in this great state. We have a fantastic governor. The relationship between the governor and the mayors are just a textbook example of how to run the state. Our governor, you don't actually see him unless you want to. I mean, he is running the state as a business. He is creating a very, very good climate in which you, Rahman, and me feel safe and comfortable. So we are lucky. But Rahman mentioned education. It's not clear for me, Rahman. What do you mean when you say educate? Those intellectuals, those Ivy League graduates who run the Fox television and run this government deliberately created this atmosphere for these young men to go out and kill immigrants. So when you say education, what do you mean? You can be an Ivy League graduate and be a killer and a racist at the same time.
Yeah, because you can be an Ivy League leader and be uneducated.
In what sense? I mean, cultural education, you mean?
The fundamental education needed, you don't need to go to college to be educated.
Okay, that's clear now.
It's the education that, I mean, I've met a lot of people who are very well educated and they didn't go to school, and some of them, may even go to school. There are two different things, especially the way education and the way we see it, the way it has become, because yes, that's also a problem to discuss separately, how our education has moved from really educating people to be human beings, citizens of the society, rather than just be tools of the economy, because that's something that we have today. People are just made into tools of the economy. We just look at only that aspect of being. And the society is made up of individual humans. The society doesn't exist by itself. And however you define society based on all these ideologies that the Ivy Leagues or the people that you're talking about, that they throw around, however you define a society by all of those things, capitalism, this and that, it doesn't function on its own without the individual human beings that you have that make it work, that make it what it is. And if you don't educate these individual human beings well enough, or if I should say, the way you educate these individual human beings will determine how that society is going to function, how the society with the heart of, say, capitalism, you call it, or whatever, the way it's going to function is going to be the way these individual human beings that constitute that society, the way they are educated. So it's very important for us to pay attention to how people are educated. And the way people are educated today, we are looking at the economy defined in terms of the capitalism that we know, because capitalism is one thing to define capitalism in one way, it's another thing to practice in a different way. So we look at the way the engine of the economy runs, and that's how we focus on educating people just to become tools of the economic system. which is great because, yeah, we need the economy to be able to sustain ourselves as a society and to be able to do whatever we want to do. But that part of the education that's supposed to make people understand themselves, who they are as human beings, to understand my position in the world among humanity, my privileges, my rights, my responsibilities, who am I, and all of these things. When we are not educated enough in these areas, and when you lack this kind of education and you go out in the society to function as a tool of an extreme capitalist machine, you don't see human beings when you're trying to make economy. Look at this guy, I don't remember his name all the time, that writes all this stuff for Donald Trump. I'm trying to remember this bald guy. But you look at him, and this is... You don't see a human being that sees himself as a human being that respects the other person, and he doesn't see humanity in the other people. So these are the problems that we have when you have all these people striving just to after the dollar, and they don't see the human beings behind all of this. So that's the problem. You look at what's going on at the border. I mean, you look at people dying. You look at the where kids are shot in cages and all of these things. We have people who are fanning the engine of the society, but that they don't see human beings. They just see, oh, you have to just be American. So if I just say, oh, American, I'm waving the flag of America, that's when you see me as a human being. And it's unfortunate. That is not education.
Yeah, got it. It's very clear now, yeah. Very clear, very clear. I forgot that name too, actually. The White House, I think he's an advisor or he's a writer or something, but he's a very nasty man. In general, at the face value, every presidential election, do matter. From setting foreign and domestic agenda to shaking the Supreme Court. Some even do have consequences that determine the nation, that would alter the very well-being of a country. Do you think the 2020 presidential election, we will be facing one such kind of election? How important is 2020 presidential election?
That's a great question. A 2020 presidential election is a game changer. It's a do or die. It's the most crucial election that this country would have in a very long time.
Really?
And as Africans or as minority, we need to sit up and look at this properly, because this is a time where we need to step up. We need to go out. We need to make our voices heard. That is the only way that we can make meaningful change in the society. That is the easiest and the cheapest way of making change. You see, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we have a Republican governor, Governor Charlie Baker. He is a governor who stands for the rights and responsibilities of the people of Commonwealth, Democrats alike. And when things doesn't favor his state, he speaks up irrespective of who is saying those things, be it a Republican. Because he understands that at the end of the day, the people of the Commonwealth, irrespective of their political affiliations, are humans. And they need to be treated with such dignity. And when you look at the number of Africans or African Americans, it's a huge number. And one cultural issue that we've had is abstaining from the polls and then complaining at special points in our history. So this time we need to change that mindset. We need to go out and vote. We need to educate our communities the importance of voting. Everyone in this Commonwealth, every African American who is a United States citizen should be prepared, should register. If they don't register, they should meet African Television Network of New England to help them towards that process. And there are a lot of other communities and other state-fund agencies out here that are willing to, because we need to go out, we need to make the change, and we need to be able to make our voices heard. So it's very important, and that is why part of our job sitting here today is to educate, inform, and make sure people are aware of the importance and the stakes of this election. Because if we fail, we would fail for a very long time.
Deported to Africa, man.
Well, we've called shithole and a whole lot of other things have gone wrong. And then there's still, who knows what will come in the next 4 years. I mean, so it's important that we should follow agenda, we should follow the statements, and we should also not just go out and vote, because we should follow this debate. And look at these candidates.
Exactly.
See what they have for us. See what they are willing to, what they are promising. Because what they are promising, it's not going to change when they become head of state. President Trump said it before he became the president. So we should take this very serious. If we do not understand in those languages, if English is not our first language, African Television of New England, Network of New England is willing to translate to some of these African languages so that people can understand better, because at this point in time we would put in every resources that we have. We would speak in the language that we understand better, so that our people can be not only informed but very, very informed, so that they can make the best decision when it comes to this election.
Oh, great point, Rahman. This election is really amazing. This is like game changer, as they said. How important, how serious is this election?
The weight of its seriousness is the weight of Donald Trump. You know, is it to keep him in office or get him out? So, and we know the goal is to get him out. So, because it's difficult to imagine the next 4 years. Looking at what he's been doing so far, and what he represents, and all of that. So, what we are looking for, the goal is to elect someone else. And yes, who will that someone else be? At the same time, we have to be mindful, because we don't want to go from fire back to frying pan. Yes, the Democrats, you're having a lot of Democrats vying for the office now, and whoever comes up among them. But we also have to be, this is where we have to be careful first, to see, okay, who do we want, among all these people that are campaigning now. And people have to be careful, because we get confused by what they're throwing around. So they're bringing socialism to America, and all those things. We have to understand what are these people talking about? What do they, what is socialism, and what is, the candidates who are talking about things that are closer to what we call socialism, what are they talking about? And people need to start looking at ourselves and looking at what works for us, because that's part of the miseducation that we have, because they've taught us that socialism, capitalism, these are what they are, and then we just hold them as umbrella, and we're looking for, but that's not what happens when you get to real life. For example, what Bernie Sanders is talking about, what he's pursuing, take away the labels and look at the policies, the substance of what he talks about. What do you think about all of this? This is how we need to consider what all of them are talking about, and be able to select who is really, that we know that will make a better country, at least to do something better within the next 4 years. So I think, and in order to understand that, we have to look at the problem where we are. Things are really terrible in terms of the social cohesion. Things are falling apart, and so we need someone who will understand all of this and be able to strive to bring the people together. Because right now it appears as if we don't have one America. You have many Americas, and if this country is going to really continue to stand out as what we all want it to be, we have to all come together. We have to all understand one another, and we have to understand where we want to go.
Yes.
So.
Good point. Good point. 2020 is very, very important here. Beside the presidential elections, census 2020 is also coming. It is very important. If you remember, Massachusetts lost one of its 10 congressional districts in 2010 census. I think it is the only Commonwealth New England state that lost a state, of course. New York lost one, but in New England area, I think Massachusetts is the only state lost. And in 2020, according to a new report by Election Data Service, the biggest states gain will likely be in Florida and Texas, both almost Republican leaning. How relevant is that? Why should we care about 2020 census?
I think we should care about the 2020 census because it's important that the government or the community or the city or the state know the amount of people living in that state, because then they can be able to provide better services, allocate proper appropriate budget.
Yeah.
If we do not go out to get to fill the form right and be involved in the process, then we will not get the proper services that we deserve, because we will not be properly represented or we will not be properly accounted for. Yeah. So it's important that we all get involved. We all make sure that we do fill out these forms properly. If we have any issue doing that, there are a lot of services, and our African Television Network of New England would be showing those services that will be available during this period, and I am proud that this television network will be covering that hands-on, so that the people can have the information that they need, because sometimes English is not a lot of Africa, a lot of people, English is still not their first language.
You speak French too?
Yes, and a whole lot, we have all the vernaculars that we speak in a whole lot of these, even English-speaking African countries. Yeah. So we want to make sure we educate them. Because when we get more districts like in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it means more resources for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which translates to better service overall for the community and the state. So it's important that we take this into consideration so that we can be able to pull in the resources that we need, and our congressmen would be able to provide us with better services, and the governor would also be able to pull in more budget, and also we would be able to make proper decision when it comes to the election. Because we need that seat. We desperately need it. And we need more seats, not just that. Especially at a time like this where politics is becoming politicized. So we need things that would really give us the edge over all those states, and also to be able to make proper decisions. Or else our voting will be useless.
Sure.
The issue of...
it's very important.
Sorry, the issue of citizenship in the census
it's out now.
Throwing out.
Which is good, right?
Yeah.
Well, even if it wasn't thrown out, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I know we have brilliant judges who look at the greater picture, and they're not going to vote things that would... They were not going to side with that, because at least our state has been known for making brave decisions when it comes to real things that affect society. So I'm proud of this.
Now it's not an issue now. But it matters. I mean, even as little as subsidized housing, vouchers, supplemental, that food stamp, those kind of things are coming because of your census participation. Tell us the value, the relevance of Census 2020, why we should really participate.
As he has mentioned, the importance of it, because we need to know get the good figure, accurate figure of the number of people living in the state. So, and which is why the issue of the citizenship initially was that it was about the problem of politicizing, as you said, that got to the point, but not really being able to deal with the issue of how do we know the accurate number of people living within certain areas, because the importance of it is to be able to provide, largely provide all the services that are needed. If we don't have an accurate figure of people living in a certain area, then the provision, the social services and all of that, and even part of the revenues, and that also affects the political structure because it affects how people get represented, and that's why it's really important that we need to take it very seriously.
Yes, excellent. I think we don't have too much time, but we will definitely go back to Africa. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a very, very important and it's a game changer. 27 African Union member states were signed in Kigali 2018. But as of July 2019, 54 states have signed the agreement. Big deal. Is it? Game changer for Africa?
Yeah.
In what sense?
No, it is a game changer. It's something that aligns with the spirit of the people.
Yeah.
As you know well, within Africa, people move around. All these artificial borders that divide us and all of that, these are not things that people who do business, it's not something that it's when you hit the border and someone is trying to, that's when you face the obstacle. But naturally, people trade all around. I mean, in the house where I grew up, most of the people in my house were all international business people, and not only a very small fraction traveled out of Africa. Most of them were all within Africa. We talked about Cameroon, we talked about Ivory Coast, and all these places just the way you talk about, you're going from Roxbury, you're going to Dudley, you're going to Bridgewater or something. That's how we talked about it. And someone wake up in the morning one day, I was like, you know what, I'm going to Ghana, and so that's the spirit, that Africans have, and to be able to make sure that our laws, our agreements, the institutions that we have reflect that is really going to be very helpful. And we just have to, we still have to work hard. Sure. And one of the problems, as I mentioned earlier, that we were discussing before the camera started rolling, was the issue of some people thinking, is this going to take us further away from the socialistic foundation that the founders, the freedom fighters of Africa, that they campaigned for at the time, because they wanted to, they wanted us. They believed that a lot of them associated capitalism with colonialism. Yeah. Given that the colonialists were they were practicing capitalism, and they decided that this is how we were going. But we have to be careful how people talk about all these things, as I have been mentioning all along. Those labels, we don't want to get them confused with the substance of what is beneath. So some people are thinking that this free trade agreement is going to take us away from that, and some people are hailing that, and some people are condemning that we should stick to the old ideas that they were fighting for. But in actuality, the socialism that they were talking about was you have to understand their socialism. For example, I know they call themselves democratic socialists, not even just socialists that they call it. I know even in Nigeria, Awolowo in Nigeria. So they liked the idea of democracy, and they understood how democracy worked and how they wanted to. So they put all these things together, and they wanted to work. What they were looking for is solidarity among Africans. Yeah. And I think this free trade achieved that solidarity. So we should keep that in mind. But is it taking us into capitalism or something like that? There's nothing wrong with capitalism. People should understand. It's also it's the way things are practiced in certain areas. The capitalist societies that we know in the world, how have they been practiced? how is capitalism practiced within, and that's how we want to understand what are the principles of capitalism by itself. It doesn't, the principles of capitalism itself doesn't mean that, it's not about, what do they call it, man eats man, as you see in many capitalist society. No, and the same thing when it comes to socialism. People, they point at the 20th century socialist societies and all of that. And is it really socialism, the principle of socialism that they followed word for word? No. So that's why I want people to really understand that all these labels are not the reality on the ground, and people should just look at the ideas and what they want that will benefit them. And that people to pursue what will benefit them, and we need the markets. We need to interact through the market. A lot of things happen. Culture also progress, but we have to practice something that's humane. So that's what I think is important.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very great idea. It really aligns with the purpose, the agenda of Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Thomas Sankara. See, prior to these, Africans, if you want to leave Cameroon to Nigeria, or sometimes you have to take a flight to Europe and back to Africa. It was just a waste of time. But this is bringing down the borders. This is, you see, the United States passport. You travel to a lot of African countries without a visa, but a Cameroon passport or a Nigerian passport, you couldn't even travel around Africa without the visa. It was just a lot. But right now, a poultry farmer in Nigeria can ship chicken to Kenya or egg to Kenya, and this is huge because Kenya, Africa import eggs from Romania and butter from China, but we have African farmers who are struggling hard. This is going to empower Africa to its fabric. There would be a lot of money. There will be intra-African trade. It would grow. Right now, according to statistics, intra-African trade statisticians and romantic economists would say it's at 2%, 3%, but actually it's at 0%. Africa, it's stagnated, it's suffering from schizophrenia. So the question now is, how do we, using this great achievement, this great treaty, to move these borders, kind of bring down these breaches and let us trade among ourselves and let the flow of money circulate within the African continent. This is a huge step for Africa. And that is why African Center for Fraud Prevention is willing to work with the African government and African head of states to address the issues of corruptions, the issue of citizens of one country having 5 passports or changing their names, and trying to see how we can align systems so that countries like South Africa that are way advanced will not say, okay, I'm tired of Nigerians because when someone does something in our country, we cannot trace them, or Cameroonian. So we want to work with them so that we can better strengthen the system, because this is a huge success for Africa, and we pray and we support, us Africans in the diaspora support this great initiative and are willing to give back the skills so that Africa can become this great continent that it is. Remember, it's a 1.5 billion people continent. The per capita income is just low. The resources is there. The technical know-how is there. So we're going to push it. We're going to work hard to help the governments so that we can move forward.
It is ratified already.
Yes,
right?
it is.
So imagine if 1.5 billion people are watching my film.
That's a question. That is a great question.
Very well, eventually, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very happy, actually. We made it this far as a continent. Uchiro, I interviewed you about probably a year ago about Cameroon. You are from Cameroon. It was really horrendous in Cameroon, the civil war between the Anglophone and the Francophone. Things has gotten even worse now. Or is it getting better? Would you like to say a few things?
Yes, again, thank you, African Television Network for New England, for granting me that interview a couple of months ago. Through your interview, I've been able to meet a lot of head of states, President of Kenya, President of Ghana, President of Sierra Leone, and many more, to address the issues of Cameroon. Being able to have this bilateral discussion with them, hour-long discussions with them about the issues of Cameroon. And the situation right now, it's still deteriorating. More than 200 and something villages burned down. But again, we are willing to work with the Cameroon government to provide solutions to the problem, to help them address this problem. The president had called for dialogue, and I I think we, through this our show, through this channel, and all the privileges that your state television network brings to us in order to address the disputes in Africa, especially Cameroon, we are willing to send expertise to Cameroon, or even work with other leaders to provide other African leaders to provide a platform where dialogue can occur outside of Cameroon, so we can put an end to the guns. Because as we speak, kids are still not going to school. And what the African Center for Fraud Prevention is doing at this point is we are doing a fundraiser where we are trying to raise money to send kids back to school, to pay their tuitions, especially those internally displaced and those in Nigeria who cannot afford to pay school fees, because we understand the importance of education, of skills development in a society to foster development or growth. Because even if Cameroon were to separate or have a two-state federation, the people of the English, of Southern Cameroon need an educated workforce to pilot that growth or that development. Or if the people of Southern Cameroon were to get the independence that they are looking for, that we are fighting for, they should also have that education, that skills that is needed. Look at Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is it's independent, they've been fighting, but when you go there, half of the skills is foreign. Because during the war era, a lot of Sierra Leoneans could not go to school because they were fighting, busy in the bush fighting. Same thing with South Africa, the blacks. So I think Cameroon should learn from this, and that is why we are here, and that is why we work hard with all the resources that we have and all the parties that are willing to address the issues of Cameroon, so that we can put an end to this, because a lot of people are dead and the more are still dying. And the African Union has an agenda to put down the guns in 2020. This is 2019 and this is mid-2019. We are getting to 2020 and we're still talking about the guns, and we just signed the African trade. So how do we blend these two? We want to move this continent forward. So we want to silence the gun, and it's very important for this development to take off. We have to silence the gun. It's a must. And I am happy that we have Raham, a filmmaker who would make good films that would show some of these problems that would be addressed to the African Union, so that they can better understand some of the problems that is faced by Africans themselves. Because I think there is a distortion between head of states, African leaders, and the civil society in Africa. There's a disconnect in between, because they don't get to feel what the people are feeling. And I think someone like a movie star like Rahman need to educate them about that relationship and the importance of that relationship, so that we can move this continent forward. And we are going to do more in that light. And thanks again for having me.
Briefly, very briefly, do you have a direct relation now with the BR government? Do you have an access to give them an advice? Or briefly,
the government of Cameroon is willing to, it's looking for solutions to the problem. And like every other government would do, I know that there are some good people who still want this problem resolved. Even if it's a federation, whatever the outcome, the goal is to silence the gun. So as a result, we are going to work hard with your organization to order to use our resources and the people that we know in the government of Cameroon to see what we can do and connect them to the right people, so we can stop.
We have less than 3 minutes, and 2020 presidential election is upon us. 2020 census is upon us. In closing, give us some advice how we proceed from here to 2020. As a community, as an African community, as African Television Network. Briefly.
Thank you. I'll come back to the...
we don't have too much time.
Yeah, I understand. So that's why I want to come back to the issue of education that I have been trying to hit upon. And I think it cuts across the situation we're facing here in America, the situation in Africa, and all these things that we're talking about. The education is very important in the way that we have been talking about it. The technical educations and all of that are still important as well, but we need to start from the foundation. But I want to emphasize one thing. As a filmmaker, yes, it's my passion to be able to try my best as much as possible but this is something that every one of us can do. Briefly. Once we know that this is what we need, everyone watching right now, it is something that everyone can do. Yeah. Everyone, you can pause to look at yourself, and then so that you're not waiting for a certain one filmmaker or two filmmakers or 3 artists, or it's something that every one of us can do. And I think it's important that people know that power is within them to pick up a book somewhere, start meditating about certain things, so that we can get this understanding going.
Voting is the best way to change a society, and I urge every African to go out in your number, take a family member, transport people, make your cars available. We have to vote. We have to be counted, because that is the only way we can get a better society that we deserve, and that is the first way of making meaningful and prosperous change.
Excellent. I love you guys very much. Thank you very much for giving us your valuable time. You have been watching the African Television Network of New England. Thank you for watching, and ahlan wa sahlan.
መናፈሻ ስንሄድ ያየናቸው ጥንዶች ከምናብ አይጠፉም የዛን ጊዜው የካሴቱ ዘመን ሙዚቃው መርጫዬን ስመውላው ነበር ቁጥርህን ይገልጽልኝ ነበር መልእክቱ ፍቅሬ ውስጤ እንዳለ እንዳልኩህ ብቻዬን ያኔ ያለልኝ